Welcome to PolyInnovator. This is how to be a totally different person in 6 months. The way you got to think about it is you have to break things down into the yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily notes. And I think that is a great way for people to understand how do you measure that change from person A to who you want to be person B. This started out as an idea that was going to be a video, but now I realize I needed to fluctuate the ideas in a blog post portion, so I'm going to be looking off of there to see how I want to explain it to everybody watching this video. You have to think about who you want to be and work your way backwards from there. And so how you go about becoming a new person has to be systematized, especially in such a short window. So the reason why I made this post in particular, 6 months. How do you get to that point in 6 months? Well, that's not actually that long amount of time, but it's also not necessarily a year either. A lot of people think it takes a lot longer to become one. And I think while technically some people have pivoted their life in a shorter time span than 6 months, 6 months is actually a lot more sustainable and more applicable to most people. And so a lot of people might be doing their, I don't know how to say, like yearly resolution right now. And a lot of the times people fail at that. And so you kind of have to throw the yearly resolution out the window and just think about how do you make a new habit? How do you make many new habits actually? And incorporate them into who you want to be. And so that is the point of this post, this video, where it's like, okay, how would I be that person? And like I said earlier, you work your way back. When you're working your way back, what habits does that person have? What is their mannerisms? How do they act or respond in certain situations? And how does that differ to who you are now? And so how do you change your mental response? Because you can do that. Everything is changeable in life. You just have to figure out how to do it. So you got to start with why. Why do you think you need to change? Well, are you not accomplishing the goals you want to do? There could be a simpler solution. And for some people, you might need to leave this video and go look at some of the other ones on the channel and see like, okay, maybe I just need a new system to organize things. Cool, go do that. But for other people who want a dramatic change in their life, particularly within 6 months, but ideally like just as quick as possible, really, then you need to figure out why do you want that change? Are you not happy where you live? Are you not happy how you live? And what are the things that need to change in order for that to happen? And so how does one change in just half a year? That is kind of a weird time frame. And a lot of people think like, oh, in 3 months or 90 days. That's great. And you can do it then, but you don't necessarily need to do it in 90 days. And the difference in difficulty between 1 quarter and 2 quarters, or like in 90 days versus half a year, it jumps pretty dramatically, and I don't think you need to change your life in 90 days. For example, if you are feeling financially strained, you may not need to change your personality, but you might need to go get a second full-time job. And that is kind of an extreme situation where, okay, I want to get rid of my debt and save up money to go accomplish this goal. Well, how do you get the money very quickly? You could start a business, and I as a business person at heart, I definitely want to encourage more people to do it, but that business is a lot of risk, and you need a definitive way of making money, and you don't necessarily know if a business is going to do that. I would like that to happen. I would much rather have a business than work 2 full-time jobs, but 2 full-time jobs at the very least is more likely going to happen. Like you just know you're going to get a paycheck at the end of the month. And so, for example, if you need to make, let's say $10,000, pay off $5,000 of debt, save up $5,000, you need $10,000 in a short time span. Well, you can get basically 2 full-time jobs, 40 hours a week, $15, $16 an hour, and essentially over the course of at least 3 months, you're going to be able to get to that point. So in 90 days, you're working nonstop, but you're going to get to that point as soon as possible. And then you can just quit down to just 1 full-time job and kind of keep steady for a while. And so that is like a burst that you're doing for 90 days. Cool, you can get it done in 90 days. But if you were to just work 1 full-time job for 6 months, then you could also do it that way. And it's a lot more sustainable, and you're not going to burn yourself out. That's the key. And so the real philosophy behind this blog post that I'm going to attach at the description here, and what I'm trying to tell you verbally, is that you want to find a sustainable way to make this huge change and keep it, let alone not burn out in the process. Because if you burn out, then you're going to be even worse off than when you started. So this idea of quick change in a short time span, even 6 months is still short, that is a way of thinking. It's a frame of thinking that you have to understand is not necessarily something you can take advantage of, and you don't want to take the risk without getting that reward. So you want to make sure your plan and your way of preparation is a lot more effective. So that's what I'm trying to say there. So when it comes to understanding the timeline of things, I go into quickly the idea of the 12-week year, which is a book. You can go read it or go read a book summary. I actually link one in the blog post below. But essentially, it's about having 12 weeks is a quarter, and that is your 12-week years. Imagine what you can get done in a year and try to compress it down to just 12 weeks, to one quarter. And a lot of people, when they have that change of frame of mind, they actually get a lot more done in those 12 weeks. They actually get more done in a quarter than most people get done in a whole year. And that makes a huge difference when it comes to progression. Now, that is 90 days, right? It's just 3 months. Imagine what you can get done in 2 quarters, which means 2 12-week years. And that is why I'm making this particular video in this way. Again, I'm going to reiterate this. A lot of people overestimate the importance of just doing 90 days versus doing 180 days. You can get a lot of the same thing done without as much risk and a lot of the same reward. And so that's why I really wanted to push you for just half a year. So the 24 weeks, if you will. But you have 2 sprints. You have 2 12-week years in that time frame. So you still have that same mindset of speed and trying to get things done. You just give yourself more time to do it. And then if you're the 2% of people watching this and you're like, I want to get it done in just 1 12-week year, go ahead. Take the same mindset and framework that I'm giving you and just compress it. That's fine. It's all good. Whenever I was looking into WGU, I was looking into how do you accelerate your degree, because this is a self-paced school. Some people came in with other credits from other schools and they were able to accelerate the degree. Some people came in with no credits, but they knew all the information, or they learned the information on their own and then just took the tests. Because just because they give you a self-paced course doesn't mean the course is as effective at teaching you quickly. Whereas you could learn from a different source a lot more quickly, then go take the test. And so these people took these 4-year degrees and compressed it down to 2 years. Actually, one was like 3 years, and that was already pretty fast for a lot of people. I think they just took the actual WGU course and just sped it up and did it in like 2 or 3 years and just took the basics. They didn't transfer any credits in. And then other people managed to compress it down to like 6 months, a 4-year degree into 6 months. And it's one of those things where they basically did this, but in their own way. And by doing, first off, they transferred stuff in, they learned on their own. They had already learned a lot of it on their own beforehand too. And so they had stuff they already brought in. They had previous experience. Sorry, I'm stuttering today. They had previous experience that allowed them to accelerate at that degree, but they also did it in that moment too. And that is what I'm trying to encourage you to do here, is accelerating your plans and your actions within that 12-week year. So the next section here is really important, and the blog post, I linked to it in the blog post below, is very important. So maybe I'll actually just link it below to the current one too, just because it's so important. How do you manage the yearly, quarterly, monthly, weekly, and daily plans, the notes? And you can change how you use those notes. I have a whole system in place where it's like, okay, the daily notes do this, the yearly notes do that. Maybe for you, you might take a whole different approach. And that's okay. I just want you to start thinking in that scale. And so the yearly is not so much you really need to worry about as much, because you're not planning the whole year. You're actually just planning out half the year. What happens after that half year is not as important right now. You can figure that out in like 4 months. Like once you get towards the end of those 6 months, then you can start planning what's going to happen the 6 months after. Or maybe at the very end, you do a full like 180 and you change course directly again. Maybe you do a whole nother sprint of this. I don't know. I don't really care what happens after the first 6 months. What happens right now is what's important. And so in the yearly notes, you're really only going to worry about the first 2 quarters. So you kind of just do a quick little macro view. Then you go into those quarterly notes, those first 12-week years. And while I go more philosophical in my quarterly notes, I think for you right now, go more detailed, get more in the micro. So find the 12-week year templates and put them in there, or find whatever templates you want. It doesn't really matter, but find a way of organizing into those 12 weeks. Figure out what you're going to accomplish in those 12 weeks. Figure out what it's going to take to get the mannerisms and the habits that you want to incorporate in this new version of your life, and find a way to put them into that plan. So for example, my workout regimen is a, let's say, 6 to 8 day sprint, or I have different exercises each day. And the reason why I say 6 to 8 is that I have added some new ones since then, but for the most part, it's mainly just 6 days and then like a day of rest. And in the middle, I have a day of like semi working out. So it's not really rest, but it's not as hard as the other days. The other days are going to go really hard. that system worked really well when I had high energy in the summer, but it's not always the greatest in the winter. So I had to kind of change things up depending on the season. But my point is, I had an idea of like, how do I change things up in that 6-day format? Well, I generally change the variables of exercise, the speed, intensity, and volume. I'm getting to the point here, don't worry. And so usually I just keep that same 6-day format, and then each week I change it based on what variable I want to focus on. Now, I don't generally plan those out ahead of time. I usually just focus on what my body can handle in that time frame. But if I were to plan it ahead of time, how would I schedule out those weeks ahead of time? How would I plan to push for, let's say, speed or intensity, and then the next week I do volume, and then kind of repeat the process? Or do I flip the process, do volume one week, do volume the next week even more, and then go back to intensity and speed? And so changing the way you're planning the weeks ahead is what I'm trying to say there. And one thing I wanted to do is create a 90-day plan, and then I'm going to post that as like an actual download people that can have. But that 90-day plan will incorporate not only my 6-day workout plan in multiple sprints, but also in between I'll have new ideas that I have taken from different regimens around the world and incorporate that into the 90-day plan. So that 90 days, that 12-week year is going to have some of the most powerful workout routines that I've ever done. And so that's what I'm saying. I can plan out that new habit, even though it's just evolving from what I had before. You can do that for other different habits too within this new endeavor or new version of you. So finally, we're going to get into the idea of how do you incorporate those habits. They say it takes like 21 days for a new habit to stick. Sure, but you could start today or tomorrow and still have that habit going. Like at the beginning of the summer, I had this really hard time. And this last summer of 2020-25 is what I'm trying to say. And I managed to start a workout habit daily, sometimes most of the time actually twice a day, and it just started out of nowhere. I was so motivated so quickly that from then on, I was working out every day, once or twice a day. That's kind of insane, where I went from 0 to 100 and I just kept it going. I got to a certain point where after around 8 weeks, I needed to take a deload week. But I managed to last that long, like 2 months there, just completely going. And deload weeks are actually productive because you're letting your body rest and recover so you can go back even stronger. My point is that habit started like that. Granted, it is a habit that I had already had in the earlier years of my life. So if you're starting a new habit completely from scratch, it's going to be different. But if you've already had that habit and you're bringing it back, it's a lot easier to rebuild it. So depending on which habits you are incorporating into this new version of you, it could be a lot quicker, it could be a little bit longer, and you need to account for that in your 12-week plan. And then, so you got to think about, what does this new person look like? How do they act? And I said this at the beginning, but it's one of those things where you have to understand the framework of who you want to be and how do you get to that person. And you're wanting to decrease that journey, the time it takes to become that person. And I think that the framework that you have to have is going to be different for every single person watching this video. So I'm trying to give you a basic outline of how do you start, but I can't tell you what is the next step after you start. I mean, at least for the most part. If I'm talking to you directly, if I'm life coaching you or something like that, then I might be able to help you. But for the random person watching this video or reading the blog post, I don't know where you're starting from. And so I don't know what habits or ways of tracking your projects and goals for you in particular is going to be, because it's going to be different from the person next to you. So take this blog post, take this video. They both have different angles to it, so I would definitely check out the blog post below and just figure out where do you need to start and then how do you get to that point B.